Welcome to the Maritime Executives podcast series, In the Know. I'm Tony Munoz, Editor-in-Chief. Our Executive Corner podcast will provide conversations with top executives concerning events and issues that are shaping our industry today. We will also bring you up to speed with the latest news and editorials covered by the Maritime Executive.
Welcome to the Maritime Executive Magazine's podcast series, In the Know. I'm Paul Benecki, and today I'm joined by Ben Palmer, the president of Inmarsat's Maritime Division, for a discussion of connectivity in the modern era. Ben, why don't we take it away with a quick introduction about yourself and about Inmarsat?
Hi, Paul. Great to be with you today. Thanks for inviting me on. I'm Ben Palmer. As you said, I run the Inmarsat business, focused very much on delivering high quality connectivity to the world's great merchant ocean-going shipping companies. I think Inmarsat probably needs a little introduction for this audience. We're the global leader, I guess, and have been for many years in not only in connectivity but also in safety. I'm also a member of the executive committee of Viasat. We merged with a California-based Viasat about 18 months ago. And so I wear two hats. I'm the operational P&L leader for Inmarsat, but I also have responsibilities as part of the leadership team of the combined company, and enjoying that role as well as the line leadership for Maritime.
Great. Thanks for the intro. Well, so every month we hear more about how Maritime is embracing high-speed connectivity. What are your shipping customers asking for today? What do they need most, and what are their expectations in the modern market?
Well, I think demand for connectivity has never been higher, Paul. We see exponential increases in demand over the last several years. We're really going through a paradigm shift in how that connectivity is delivered. And I guess we're also going through a paradigm shift in how customers are using it, the use cases, the value driving benefits that they can obtain by harnessing digitalization in much the same way as we do onshore. So, I think it's an exciting time to be in this market. It's an exciting time to be looking to serve a market that's evolving. I guess against that background of change, I guess some of the drivers of customer demand, though, are pretty constant. People are looking for certainty, I think. They want to work with a trusted provider whose capabilities, whose capacity, whose coverage can evolve to meet their evolving needs over time. They want convenience. They want to be able to shop with somebody who they know understands them and their needs. The maritime world is a pretty complex one. It's a very hostile environment, and the mission really matters. Obviously, from a safety perspective, that's certainly true. But also in the context of getting business done, this is a challenging, high stakes environment in which to operate. People want to know that they're dealing with people who understand that, who have high quality support. They obviously want global coverage. They want to know that where they go, oftentimes in an unpredictable and less planned manner than is sometimes the case in other domains. Ships move around, and they move around according to the demands of their customers and the market, and that's not if I think about analogous sectors like aviation or obviously domestic, more static consumers or more predictable consumers. Maritime has particular challenges in that dimension. They want to know that the capacity available to them is going to be consistent and will consistently meet their needs as their needs evolve. And obviously, they want to know that their data, their information, oftentimes, whether that's about personal data or if it's about competitive advantage, they want to know that it's safe and secure. And so increasingly, cyber security is becoming an important thing that our customers and clients want assurance about and want to talk to us about and want to understand about. So I think that demand for certainty hasn't changed. Um, the dimensions of it are evolving pretty fast, and the extent to which they are changing is driven by the pace at which customers are cottoning on to the advantages that they can derive, not just in terms of their crew, because that's been a pretty important driver of demand over the last 4 or 5 years, but increasingly also as a function of how they can derive competitive advantage by harnessing digitalization in a more business-like sense. How, if you like, they can uh, extend from the floating home, which we've sort of talked about a lot over the last few years, in terms of crew welfare and crew connectivity, but increasingly towards the floating office and even the floating factory. So those are exciting new dimensions that our customers are getting very excited about, and which inevitably we are responding.
Well, thanks for that market overview. So now that so many ships have broadband data, it's become much more common. What kinds of changes do you think we're going to see for shipboard operations and daily living?
Well, I think your question, you know, it came in two halves. There was you asked about operations and you asked about living, and as I just suggested, we've been thinking about the ship as in really three dimensions, actually. But the two you mentioned are probably the most salient for the time being. They're places where people live. They're places where people live for a long time, a long way from home, and that reality uh, is driving a real focus on the welfare of those people, their connectedness to their families, their entertainment, their education, their training. And so I think the focus on crew connectivity, the focus on a home-like experience in an environment where getting young people to go to sea is not as easy a sell as it was, perhaps back in the day when my children have many other options, and many of our children have many options, and being tucked away on a ship a long way from home, a long way from the rest of the world is not as attractive as it was perhaps even a few decades ago. So I think we're going to see a continued trend and drive towards providing people with the sort of connectivity they can expect at home, and the uses that they put to it, whether that's entertainment, welfare, training, communicating with their families, sharing in the lives of their families in a seamless way. That's a trend we've seen for a while, and I think that's going to continue. And then on the operations side, I think there's a couple of dimensions to that, Paul. One is simply I guess I call it the sort of pandemic effect. Just as we all got used to doing this over the course of the last 5 years, conducting a far higher proportion of our business communications activities remotely rather than face to face. I think some of the more sophisticated companies, they've got these are millions of $1 million assets, oftentimes carrying hundreds of millions of cargo. They're operating in sophisticated, just-in-time, end-to-end logistics and supply chains, and facilitating, decent, seamless bridge to boardroom type communications is increasingly important. The days of the noon report and a sort of more reactive transactional approach to communications, I think, increasingly being complemented by much more interactive, communications which require much higher confidence of bandwidth, and we know quite a lot of that, bit about that from the work we do in other domains, whether that's the government domain or even in the business jet world, where CEOs expect a high degree of confidence around their comms. They want to run board meetings from their private jets. So you're seeing that becoming more important in the shipping industry. Um, I think sort of more operationally, you're also seeing um, new use cases, things that have could conceptually people knew and have known would be of benefit, but haven't had the connectivity available to do it. And now that they are increasingly getting the comms to do it, the connectivity to do it, things like remote monitoring, health and usage monitoring, the delivery of diagnostics, big data analytics around certain use cases which will drive value, cargo condition monitoring. These are, I can go on, but these are becoming increasingly meaningful operationally in terms of driving business value for people. I think autonomy is going to be a part of that too. The ability to operate ships more remotely. I'm not yet ready to say that we'll have large oil tankers floating around the world with nobody on them, but I think autonomization of certain key operations on board ships, potentially, um, and that taking off, that's going to drive an increasing focus on connectivity, on the right bandwidth, and interestingly, on the right bandwidth going up as well as coming down, because the remote ship, um, you care as much about knowing what's going on the ship as well as transmitting to the ship, and so that's going to be an interesting shift in the paradigm too. So I think there's a whole bunch of new use cases beyond comms, which connectivity can facilitate, which are going to drive competitive advantage for those people that want to invest to adopt it. Um, I've always thought that this industry was driven by, or innovation in this industry was driven by two key drivers. One is regulation, obviously, to the extent that the regulatory machine pushes people to do the right thing. I think the other thing that drives innovation at scale is a recognition of when technology can be harnessed to drive cost reduction or competitive advantage, and people are starting, I think, to see beyond um, connectivity as a bug, i.e., something they just had to have, and seeing connectivity actually increasingly as a feature, something that will really deliver value for them over time. And yeah, that's exciting. That's exciting for those of us that are playing in this space.
Yeah, for sure. There's one other aspect of the floating office concept that I think you've talked about in the past, other SATCOM companies as well, which is the increasing utilization of the cloud for
Yeah.
business applications on board. And I was wondering if you might be able to touch a little bit on that aspect of the floating office too.
Yeah, thanks. And I should have highlighted that. So if that's a good go back, thank you. I meant to talk about that. I mean, I think um, just as we have come to expect seamless connectivity as an enabler of the kind of two-way communication, video conferencing type communication that we're engaging in right now, I think there's also recognition across the shipping industry that, I hope nobody's offended but if I say that there's a bit of catch up to do around embracing technologies that those of us who operate, as it were, on dry land are increasingly taking for granted in how we run our businesses. And so, things like harnessing the power of the cloud as an enabler of more efficient uh, IT, as more efficient business, I think something that you're absolutely right to highlight. Um, Shipping companies are increasingly demanding that the things why would they have two systems? Why wouldn't, a land system and a seaside system, or set of processes or operations, or even ultimately set of costs? Why not think about this as an integrated, seamless business, and then and run your take advantage of the benefits that cloud-based operations can drive. The fundamental a fundamental blocker for that in the past is if you can't get surety around the continuous operation of the connectivity that will allow you to access the cloud, then that's a blocker and an impediment to moving out on that. And increasingly, I think folk recognize that some of the breakthroughs that the industry has been making will remove that impediment. And I think we're going to see, you're absolutely right, you're going to see a drive towards more cloud-based operations as a means of making things more efficient, making things more effective, but also to the extent that they drive out cost, making them more efficient as well. And that can only be a good thing for the players in the marketplace who drive down that road.
So you mentioned it takes a lot of reliability in your connectivity to pull these things off, right? And as you increasingly move business and operationally sensitive applications onto platforms that require constant connection, what kind of connectivity does that require, and how is Inmarsat helping clients adjust to that transition?
Well, that's a great question, and I think everything we've been talking about so far points to the need for change in the way that the market is served. Um, there's been a lot of disruptive innovation coming into this space, well publicized, very well funded, and really truly impressive strides forward in terms of the way, for example, that low Earth orbit satellites have been conceptualized and then built and flown to drive change into the way that the traditional VSAT operators have operated in the market. And I guess it's I don't want to be too apologetic, but the established players, people like Inmarsat, have taken a while to sort of figure out what the appropriate way forward is. I think we figured it out in a way quite a long time ago. We talked a lot about this notion of orchestrating multi-layer, multi-orbit solutions, but back in the day. And what I guess we've been figuring out is how best to deliver that orchestrated multi-orbit, multi-band connectivity. And I guess the product that we've recently launched and are in the process of starting to sell and deploy, Nexus Wave, is our kind of response to that. I think what's kind of cute uh, about Nexus is, well, I've always thought that there was a slightly false debate going on around a sort of winner takes all view of connectivity, that it was kind of LEO or GEO. I guess in the way that back in the day, there probably, I imagine, was a kind of L band or KA or KU band conversation going on. And I think I've always slightly rejected that sort of one or the other. I think life's sometimes a bit more complicated than that binary choice would imply. I'm always a bit suspicious of people who say, Ben, you've got to go left or right. And I want to sometimes recognize that it's more complicated than that. And I think what we've tried to do with Nexus is to say, actually providing the certainty of coverage, capacity, the convenience, the cyber hardening that we talked about earlier, in a way that grows with people's needs as their business evolves, is not straightforward at sea. Um, and so, the solutions that some folks have got into the market sooner than others in recent years have tended to sort of be a kind of switch. They have tended to sort of to replicate that binary nature of the conversation that I was just alluding to. They optimize for one, and then if that's not available or not, is not working, or perhaps there are parts of the world where that particular system doesn't have regulatory authority to operate or whatever, they switch to the other. Um, what we've tried to do with Nexus is to move from a switch to actually an aggregation, to a layering, to a bonding. We call it bonding. And so what we're using is quite sophisticated software-defined wide area networking capability, not to switch so you get the best available of one or the other, but so you layer and bond on top. And that way we're getting really significant enhancements in terms of the capacity and the speeds that we can offer to our customers. And north of 300 Mbps coming down the pipe is really groundbreaking for the industry. But we're also getting the benefit of much higher degrees of availability at the system level. And so we're delivering that confidence, that trust, if you like, by bringing together and bonding different underlays, different bands, um, different orbit, we've got different constellations, and also leaving room in the future to integrate new constellations as they come along, whether that's our own organic capacity coming from the revolutionary Viasat 3 satellites that are coming down the track very shortly, or leaving open the possibility of other people joining the club in terms of other satellite operators that are still perhaps a little bit behind where Starlink is, for example, and or OneWeb, but other people investing to develop capability and capacity. So so we think that we're sort of our response really is to say, hey, it's not one or the other. You're going to need a combination of capabilities into the future, different use cases. Some of the things I've been talking about so far will be optimized by uh, different use of the capacity. There are some things you'll want to make use of the low latency capabilities that a LEO play will offer you. There are others that you don't need that. And so for us, it's about optimizing and providing in a really convenient single package, uncapped, hardware inclusive, with full support, a service that isn't about, if you like, the standout capabilities of one particular underlay, but is actually optimized at the system level to deliver you the best capability to meet your needs in real time, and is capable not only of doing that today, but growing with you into the future. And so, we're we've spent quite a lot of time in the last 12 months internally focused, developing, bringing to prototype, testing, iterating, developing Nexus Wave, under the hood, if you like. And this year really, Paul, is about moving from, if you like, moving from internal focus and defense in the market to getting out on the front foot with a product that we're really excited about and which customers are telling us they're really excited about too. So, we've got a lot to do this year to get out and deploy that, but we've got hundreds of orders already in backlog, and we're really excited about the reception that this product, this offering is having out in the marketplace.
Great. Well, that's fantastic to hear. It sounds like you're getting a very positive response. I also wanted to ask you if you might want to elaborate a bit on the Viasat integration and on how that's going and what that means for maritime customers too. That's not maybe a company they're familiar with interacting with. What are the next generation of satellites going to contribute to the playing field?
Thanks. That's a great question, and I think your comment is well made. I mean, Inmarsat have a fantastic, brand recognition, brand equity in the maritime world for all the reasons that people understand. And so one of the things that's been really important through the transaction and through the merger has been to communicate that internally, and also to ensure that we've been seamless in terms of how we present to the market. The maritime team that I lead, the maritime business that I lead, is very firmly still branded as Inmarsat, and that's conscious and deliberate on the part of Mark and the board, Mark Dankberg and the board of Viasat, because we recognise the value that the Inmarsat brand has in the marketplace. We're 18 months in. We brought two quite, I mean, at one level, quite big companies, but not, we're not talking, mega merger, but two quite big enterprises. One obviously very global, based out of the UK, but with a substantial global footprint, heavily focused on maritime, government, and to a lesser degree aviation. And we brought that together with the world leader in aviation, based out of the United States, um, with some really interesting capabilities and some really strong franchise positions in government too. Um, Mark and the team wanted to do the deal because they wanted to go global and they wanted exposure to the big maritime market. And so there was an obvious deal thesis and synergy there. I think what I'd say from my perspective, in terms of being a bit parochial, you know, it, it's been really interesting and liberating to be part of a business that is so, technology focused. I mean, Inmarsat uh, had a very strong offering and a very strong service delivery mentality. Um, and we have some very clever engineers and some very strong technical capabilities. But I think we've married those to some really innovative technical capabilities coming out of California. You know as well as I do what a sort of hub of technological innovation the whole of the West Coast is, and it's been good to kind of access some of the innovative thinking and some of the technical excellence that my new colleagues and new colleagues bringing to bear. I think the other thing I'd say, and this isn't a uh, this isn't a dig at being private equity owned because private equity drives a certain discipline and a certain focus. But it has also been interesting and I think good for us to be, part of a business that's prepared to invest to, deliver the big bets that it wants to that it's identified as potentially driving value. Um, Nexus Wave is one of those. I alluded earlier to this, there's been a lot of hard work over the last year. I'd love to have started that hard work a year prior, but you're going through a transaction. People are very focused on getting the deal done. And there's a certain constraint on your ability to get out and invest for the future when you're going through that kind of process. And so one of the things I'm really pleased with is that we've been unable to unlock the capital required to invest in our future. And if you put that alongside some of the innovative, um, out of the box technology thinking that Viasat brings, that's been truly, truly beneficial for our business. I also think looking ahead that, there are some things that, uh, it's easy to kind of simplify and say, and see too many similarities between, for example, the aviation world and the maritime world. And one doesn't want to fall into the trap of saying, just because the market's evolved in planes in a certain dimension, that the same will happen in ships. They're very different industries with very different profiles, very different shapes. But hey, it's really interesting to learn from and see how people have approached uh, particular customer challenges in different industries, in different sectors. And so I think the third thing that I really take away from the merger, Paul, has been the learning opportunity on both sides of the house and preparedness to say, hey, just because we've done it that way in the past, on both sides, doesn't mean that we have to do it like this way in the future. And maybe there's some things we can learn from each other. So, we've had our ups and downs. We've had some challenges around satellite anomalies that this is a high risk environment, but we're pleased to have got through those, and when Viasat 3 comes along, the truly epic capabilities that satellite constellation will bring to bear in terms of capacity is going to really give us a fillip and a real shot in the arm. So we're really excited about that.
Well, great. That'll be really interesting to see.